Welcome to the Leading Ladies podcast with international leadership coach, speaker, author, trainer, and your host, Fiona Mackay. The Leading Ladies podcast shares stories and advice from women around the world who have successfully navigated the glass ceiling. You'll gain powerful insights into strategies for cracking the glass ceiling, embracing your self-worth and value, and advocating for yourself and others. So please join Fiona for frank, courageous, and heartfelt conversations designed to take you on a journey to new levels of personal and professional success.
Welcome back, Leading Ladies. And we are here today with one of our first few male guests. And so I'm really excited about this moment because I've always said that if we want to make a difference for women, we need men with us on this journey. And today we actually have Rear Admiral Jim Macleod joining us. He's a member of the British Royal Navy, having joined in 1989 as a weapon engineer officer. He moved away from engineering in the noughties, which to the Americans is the early 2000s. I know you get a real kick when Brits say the word naughty. And anyway, he then moved on to work in defense policy and did an operational tour in Baghdad before moving into strategic HR. Initially, he was the head of Armed Forces Remuneration before rising to Rear Admiral as Assistant Chief of Defense Staff, where he's responsible for military workforce capability. He's been leading a team that's making a big difference for gender diversity in the military and was awarded a Women in Defense Team Award this year for the great work that him and the team is doing. And today he's actually being a real champ. He is recovering from COVID, but he's still here to be with us. That's how important this cause is to Jim. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you very much, Fiona. It's fantastic to be here, and thank you for such a very kind introduction.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, a Rear Admiral says to me, I would like to be on your podcast. I'm like, woohoo! It's given me all kinds of credibility this past week with my friends. I'm like, I'm interested. I'm interviewing a Rear Admiral on Friday. And Jim, I actually, started getting to know you after the Leading Ladies of Defense conference back in March, because you joined us at the after party. And I remember you really, really wanted to speak. And you made sure that my assistant tapped me on the shoulder to say that you wanted to share, and you made some really, really excellent points, and the passion that you brought, I was like, this is someone that we need to be listening to, because I think he could teach both men and women a lot.
Oh, thanks very much. I don't remember tapping your assistant on the shoulder saying I really, really wanted to speak, but I am hugely passionate about this subject, so. I'm really glad that we did meet at that conference. It was a fascinating event, and it was really great to be part of it. And I'm really, really pleased that we connected afterwards so we can have these conversations. Because like you, I'm a big believer in this movement, and I think there's a lot of work that men like I can do with allies to make things better for women in the military, women in defence, and I'm really, really pleased to be able to talk about that with you today.
I could not agree more. Wow. If you've been listening to my previous podcasts, you'll know that the first question that I always ask is, what are your thoughts on the glass ceiling? Does it still exist?
My thoughts on the glass ceiling. I'm talking about this from the UK military perspective and my own personal insights and my own personal views on it. I think it does. I know it does. I think the thing about a glass ceiling is you can't see it when you stood on it, and you can't see it when you're looking up through it. And I think that's what's really important, and one of the biggest insights I've had about the glass ceiling. Getting people to understand that the glass ceiling exists is probably the biggest part of the battle, and that's both down the chain of command and those people at the very highest levels. And I think the other thing that this work that we've been doing has really shown me is it's not a simple problem. If it was just here's a button or here's a chisel, just smash the glass ceiling, we would have fixed it by now. Cleverer people than you and I would have made it all right. And I think it's the huge complexity that sits around this subject, which one makes it really fascinating for me, but two, I think is why it really needs a lot of different people to be thinking about it to get rid of this glass ceiling.
I agree. I mean, we've been chipping away at it for decades, and I consider myself one of those women who's broken through the glass ceiling, but I still bear the scars of it, and I still sometimes have people, throw shards of glass at me, or we'll run into a new glass ceiling. So I do agree with you. It's very, very complex. So as you mentioned, it's you can't see it when it's glass is clear. So, when did you first notice it?
So I've always had a real interest in diversity of thought, and that's what brought me into this subject. I joined the Navy, as you said in my introduction, in 1989. I joined a very, very different Navy to the Navy of today, and when I joined, they sent me to elocution lessons. I mean, your viewers will see it clearly made no difference whatsoever. But I joined the Navy where that was what was happening,
Mm-hmm.
and throughout my career, what I've realized is that we live in a world where everything's really complicated, and that we solve complex problems by having a diverse group of people around the table. And my experience of the military is it works best when it's got diverse people. As I've become more senior and I've been leading more diverse teams, it's amazed me that we don't have a fair proportion of women in those teams. The simplest way to bring diversity of thought is to get 50% of the population involved in the conversation. And we just weren't doing that. So I started to get really interested in how do we make diverse decision making? How do we get people in the conversation? And what I found was when I started chatting to the women that worked for me, I wanted to understand why did they believe that they were the problem? Why were we underrepresented? And what I very quickly realized was I didn't actually understand the problems that women were facing. But what I did know, and I remember this conversation very well with a junior officer who's done some amazing things in the sort of diversity space, was she knew what needed doing, but didn't have the ability to go away and do it. I didn't know what needed doing, but as a senior officer, I had the ability to go away and make things happen. So
when you say
together.
Ability, sorry to interrupt you, but when you say ability,
Yeah.
like she was capable of doing it, but she didn't necessarily have the like the authority. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's way more capable than I am. Yeah, she didn't have the budget. She didn't have the understanding of how defence functions. She didn't have the contacts and the network that I have. She didn't have the experience of how to make things different. And a lot of the things that that she was explaining to me, I just was completely oblivious to it and hadn't really even thought about them. And if I kind of give you one little story, we have in the Royal Navy on our warships signs everywhere. But there's a really traditional sign that says officers and duty men only. And it's around where the accommodation is for officers.
Yep.
And I've grown up with that and never thought anything of it. And she mentioned it to me and said, in the officers and duty men. And my first response was, oh God, here we go again. It's his traditional naval language. And then I thought about it and caught myself and I thought, yeah, actually, if I am surrounded by terminology which is denying my existence with man overboard drills, officers and duty men, duty part of the duty seamen, and all of these different words, then I can understand why it starts to impact. So it was that eyes opening in those conversations that made me realize that, we probably can do something about this.
I love that. And I love how you termed it's not about people nagging and being petty. It's denying our existence. Funny story. I used to fly in a lot for work into Orange County, and I'd go and pick up my my rental car from I'm not going to name which car company it was. And every time I went in there, they had a board on the wall and it said Chairman's Club. And so really bothered me. And so one time I just stopped the manager and I said, that sign says Chairman's Club. Do you know that there are women that actually chair companies? And so actually the next time I flew in, they had taken it down. And I really like that small victory. And I know exactly what you're talking about. It's, manpower and this and that. And there's very, very masculine language, both in business and the military. And we do notice it. And And even women will fall into it. I mean, for me personally, for the longest time, whenever anybody said CEO, president, I would automatically assume it was a man, just automatically. And so I'd respond with, okay, what time is he going to be here? And it took me a long time to check that way of thinking and transform that. So it's not just something that men do, it's something that we all do as a society. So it's not us blaming men, it's just pointing out, hey, these norms need to change.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. One of the things that I've made a real point of when I meet new staff and I talk about my values and what matters to me and what doesn't, and I talk to them about diversity and gender and the importance of people being called out when they get it wrong, and that includes me. And if I use the wrong language, and the example I use is I've got 33 years of military experience, and my neurons are wired a certain way. And if I start and I get on the roll, it's very easy for me to use language that is pre-programmed into my head, and I'll continue doing that until somebody stops me. And what I've done is I've given permission for my staff to say, "Hold on a minute, Admiral, is that what you really meant?" And of course, it isn't what I meant. And I can then say, "No, that's not what I meant." But what that's doing is it's helping me because my brain's getting it right. But more importantly, it's sending a message out to everybody that works for me and everybody around that this is not that people like me need to change, and that I'm role modeling the types of responsible leadership that I believe people should have in the future. And I think the second order issue to that is it gives people permission to challenge, and it gives people that psychological safety to say, I don't think that's right. And that's so powerful. And it sounds like a trivial example in the use of gender, of language, but if you can get that into everything that you do, if people have the psychological safety to challenge, then you're such a better organization. And I'm seeing that you mentioned the working group that we set up, and a lady called, I mentioned her already, but Karen Barnacle ran it, the Lieutenant Commander in the Royal Navy. And she, one of the things that she says from the work that she did was having the psychological safety to go out and make a difference was the most powerful thing to allowing her and the team to make a difference. And I think we're talking about allies. That's one of the great things that people like me can do. We can create that space for people to excel. I can hold the space and allow people to go and do things. And we can talk in detail about what those things were. But I talk about, like, I did lots of work. My job was really easy. I always say I was at the front of the queue. I kicked the door in or held the door open, and everybody else ran in and did all the work. But I was the only one who had the authority at the time to open the door.
I love that. I love that. And yes, you're right. You just made me realize I did not announce the theme of today's podcast, which is the role of male allies in cracking the glass ceiling. Oops. Oh, wow. So yeah, I really love some of the things that you're saying there. I'm kind of getting so excited. I'm actually forgetting some of it. But I think what I'm hearing is giving people permission to speak out makes a huge difference. And I really like that because I once worked for a company where they used to say things like when there was a problem, they would say, "Oh, well, we're already pregnant with it," or throw the baby out of the bathwater. They talk about and one of the worst things that I thought they would always say was just between us girls, because like that implies, well, this is gossipy, just between us girls. And I actually went and said something, and I actually said something to a woman, and she was like, no, they don't mean anything, and a couple of people, shut me down. And I think this is quite common for a lot of people. And yeah, I mean, another one. This is awful. You say, oh, we've been caught with our knickers down, and I'm like, oh my god, like in the UK, you know what knickers means? Please don't say that. And so, you wouldn't believe the amount of language out there that can be like in some ways triggering. And what I love about what you said, like you said that they would ask you the question, is that what you really meant? Is that what you really meant? I love that, because that is such a clear, non-aggressive question. And I think in some cases, people from, marginalized groups have been so shoved down, we're angry. I mean, I've been angry. And And one of the things I'm very conscious of is the no shame, no blame approach. And because if you do go at it angry, if you want to change things from an angry place, it's a lot harder to change it. And you giving permission has allowed the other person to speak with integrity and compassion to those that need to learn.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. And I'd just like to distance myself from some of your comments about pants and other things. As a serving member of the military, we wouldn't comment on things like that. And I think one of the key things that we learned on this journey, and that I've learned as an ally, and I'm really proud to consider myself an ally. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
One of the key things that we've learned, and your listeners and viewers will not be surprised by this, is a statement of the obvious. This is a really, really complicated problem, and there are no silver bullets that are going to fix it. And I'm in an organisation which can sometimes get a little bit carried away with firing silver bullets at problems, and I often joke about how I can be tripping over the shell casings of silver bullets that have been fired, and what we learn, and you mentioned in my sort of biography, I'm a systems engineer by background, and I love applying that kind of people systems thinking process to things like this. And the team went away when we were looking at, okay, how do we improve gender diversity in the military? What do we need to do? What's preventing it? And we went away and we looked at what's been happening in the States, what's been happening in Australia, who are doing very well on this, some of the European countries. We looked at industry and pulled all that together, and we pulled together the experience of the women in defence in the UK and looked at it and analysed that. And we realised that there were a number of key things that we needed to do. We needed to change the policies to make people stay, to retain people, because we didn't have family-friendly policies. And we needed to do things about talent management. We can talk about talent management and mentoring and sponsorship. But the big thing that we found was we needed to change the cultures and behaviours, the environment in which the women were operating. And that came across really, really strongly. And we did quite a bit of work on allies workshops and how do we work in that space? How do we help to improve the understanding of predominantly male leaders at every level? And it's been fascinating. And whilst I said there are no silver bullets, it's the closest thing we've got to it. And I say that because one of the things that I found is people that started to trust me, women have started to trust me that I'm not just doing this because I have a tick in my annual report that says I need to have done something that's diversity and inclusivity. They actually trust me that I'm.
Yeah. Well, why do you care so much?
Why do I care so much? It's a really interesting question. Even just asking me that question, I can feel an emotional response to it. So I really do care about it. I can feel it in my voice. I can feel it in a response. But why is that? I think because I really care about the organisation that I'm part of, and I want the organisation to succeed. As a military, we're here to protect society, and I want the military to represent that society it's here to protect. So that's really important to me. And our business, the business of military and security is complex. It's getting more and more complex, and we're only going to solve those difficult, wicked problems if we have everybody around the table and have all the different viewpoints. And as I was saying earlier on in our chat, we should make sure we've got 50% of the population, or as good as we can, around the table when we start to think about how to solve difficult problems. And that's just from a business perspective. From a military perspective, that's beyond the ethical rightness, the moral rightness of everybody having equal opportunity. And I think that equal opportunity piece is really key. It's one of the things that I've found, and we've done a lot of work to remove this. People will say to me, well, everybody's got an equal opportunity. And I look and they do, but they have an equal opportunity against the rules as they're currently laid down.
Yeah.
And the Royal Navy and British military, the Royal Navy is hundreds and hundreds of years old. We've had hundreds and hundreds of years to get processes and systems in place to get exactly the right middle-aged white man to the top of the organisation.
Yeah. I love where this conversation is going. I absolutely love it. We're just going to take one quick moment to do a really short ad break and then come back to this exact point because I'm loving this. I'd like to take a moment to pause and recognize GM Defense, our sponsor that helps make this podcast possible. GM Defense is driving the future of military mobility by leveraging the best-in-class capabilities of General Motors for unmatched innovation, proven performance, and breakthrough lifecycle economics. Learn more at www.gmdefensellc.com and watch out for new job posts as they expand and strengthen their team. You can also follow them on Twitter and LinkedIn. The GM Defense team is amazing, and we are proud that they sponsor the Leading Ladies of podcast. And back to today's guest. So, Jim, just continuing our conversation about, everybody's got an equal chance, but the structures and the systems really are really there that to help men, and that's actually not just something that is in the military. There's a really, really great book called Gender Intelligence by Barbara Annis, and it talks about the fact that, like, in business, a lot of the tools, a lot of the processes, a lot of the norms, the structures, they're all can be traced back to the Industrial Revolution, and it was mostly men. There's hardly any women there then. And so what Barbara talks about a lot in her work is it's not about making women behave like men so they can be successful. It's about changing the environment so everybody can be successful. And so, yeah, when people talk about systemic problems, we're not saying like, oh, you've got this deep rooted problem and you're in denial, yada, yada, yada. We're saying there's stuff that people aren't aware of that is naturally holding women back. And let's have those discussions.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's absolutely what we've realized, that lots and lots and lots of small things all coming together to create these problems, whether that's policies that haven't really been thought through recently, or the way in which we make decisions on who goes on a course in their 20s, which subsequently have an impact some 10 years later, which we never really thought about. Yeah. And we've looked at all of those different elements. We just so your listeners and viewers don't think it's all bad. We did a lot of work looking at gendered language in reports and found out that it doesn't exist. We don't have gendered language in reports. We did work on promotion boards to look at. Yeah, no, and we're really pleased because it shows that we're getting this right. We looked at promotion boards and we found that there's no gender bias on promotion boards, and our promotion system is incredibly fair. What we have found is there are not enough women getting through to be promoted. So what are we doing about that? And I was touching on earlier about as people started to trust me and started to explain some of the problems, it's been fascinating because sometimes the problems are being caused by people I know really well, and they're friends of mine. So I can ring them and say, blah, 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 we'll have a chat. And I can say, are you aware? And every single time, this has happened a lot, it hasn't happened a lot, but 2 or 3 times, in each time, the individual concerned has been devastated that their actions are having this impact because they were completely unaware that that's going on, and fixed it there and then, thanked me for the conversation, and went away and did something about it. And that's hugely reassuring to me that the organization wants to change, but can't yet see. It's this glass ceiling, it can't see the glass. And we've run these gender ally workshops where we've been getting middle seniority leaders coming in, people who are going away to command warships, who are really important role models. And we've been doing sort of 2 2-hour sessions over a 2-week period. And we've had some very, very brave young women come along to those sessions and talk about their lived experience. And they have been unmitigatable successes, because what's happening is people who are going out of these workshops are going back into these really important leadership roles with their eyes wide open. And the feedback we're getting, I use one at the bottom of my email footer at the moment, and it basically is from it's from an individual who's gone off to command a warship, and he emailed back afterwards, and he said, the biggest takeaway I had was that there is so much further to go, the majority of which I was probably unaware of. Lots of these things, areas for improvement, are very obvious, but it takes someone to point them out to me. And I love, I think that's so powerful, because This is an officer who's going away to command a warship. And all of those people, for him, he's their role model. He's now gone out to that ship with a completely different view of the lived experience of women in the military and the Royal Navy, and will change the way he leads. And one of the things we teach about leadership is a leader needs to change how they lead to get the best out of the people that work for them. They should not change the people that work for them.
You're making me all emotional now. We're Northerners. We're not supposed to be. We're supposed to be tough, Jim. I love what you're saying, because I'd say 90% of the time people are unaware, and this whole thing with, cancel culture and shaming and stuff, that's not gonna help the cause. And it's like, for me, being able to have those conversations, and the fact that you've created an environment where these women can step forward and say, this is actually what's happening, is so important. Because what happens otherwise is we don't feel we can speak up, and it gets shoved down and shoved down and shoved down. And what happens when you shove down those feelings? Eventually they explode, and they may explode verbally, or they may explode by that person just getting up and walking out of the door and no longer working for the military or working for that company. And I've voted with my feet before, and I'm just really emotional right now. I want to cry. I love what you're saying.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important, just what I'm saying is reflected by our chiefs of staff and our chief of defence staff, and they're hugely committed to this, and we brief them regularly on what we've been doing, and they're pushing really strongly on this lived experience, because they too can see how this can fast track the changes. We can change policy, we can change taxonomies, but we have to change that environment within which women are living and working, and making things better. And the lived experience work we've been doing has been showing how to do that. And, I'm really proud of what the team have achieved. I'm really pleased with the way that we're sort of reflecting the needs, the direction of our senior leaders by taking that forward.
Yeah. And it's like you're I was going to say a new social contract, but it's not a new social contract. It's a new social norm. We're going to allow you to challenge us, that and stuff's going to be brought to us in a bold but compassionate way. And I think that's amazing. I really do. So what else can women do to, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's and I often you get the old guard who will say, oh yeah, but we're a military fighting service, and we do dangerous things, and of course we do. And there are times at which you have to give an order and you have to expect people to carry that out, and there are times when you don't need to operate like that, and it's making sure that we get that right. And sorry, I interrupted you on, but one of the things that that I've spoken to some of the allies workshops, and I sort of give my view, and the one I try and tell them loads of stuff, and I think I'm being really clever. And the one piece of advice that seems to land was when I tell them that I'm probably, with the work I'm trying to do in this space, I'm probably wrong 30 to 40% of the time, and I'm very happy with people pointing out that I'm wrong, and I'm no longer afraid of being wrong. Because I'm right more than I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'm doing it out of the best intentions, and I'm trying.
That's courageous leadership. Being a courageous leader is being willing to take that feedback. It's being willing to be human. It's being willing to make those mistakes, and we need more of that. We really do, especially the way the world is right now. And so I really think it's fantastic that you do that. I just want to be conscious of time, because I know that you are a busy Rear Admiral. So what else can women be doing to work with men to help amplify allyship?
I think it's a really interesting question. It's a very difficult question, and thank you for that. And it definitely wasn't in the list of questions that you sent me to think about. I think it depends where the individual is within the hierarchy. And of course, the stories that I tell about men not seeing the issues, equally applies to women. There are women out there who and I'm sure you've met them and interviewed them, who would basically say, you know, if they just get on and do the job properly, and they'll be treated on their merits.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
And of course, everybody's entitled to their own view, and from my perspective, that view is totally, that's fine. You know, if they work for me, then it's my job to make them as good as I can. So I think when women are working in our environment, one of the and I'm thinking on my feet here, but one of the things that's been really powerful is when we set up this working group and we connected with other people like you or some senior people from other industries, is that networking, that sharing, that, because we have individuals who are on their own. We may have, you know, air crew, female pilots, or officers of the watches on ship who are in very minority numbers, and therefore I think it becomes more difficult to share ideas and share stories. So the networking seems to be really important. The other thing that we're doing work on is about sponsorship, and sponsorship can be sort of seen as a double-edged sword, and some people, when I talk about sponsorship, think, oh no, that's about favoritism, that's about, you know, making sure that your individual gets through the organization, and it's not. It couldn't be further from the truth. And for an organization like ours, and you know, again, a lady I worked with told me this story, and she said she was on a ship, and she was one of the senior officers on the ship. She worked for the captain. Her and the captain were both big runners, but she said there was no way I could go running with the captain every night because you know, it how did that look? And I was always really conscious about how that looked. And it made me think about those opportunities where, you know, young officer of the watch running with the captain, that informal relationship, that getting to know a little bit more about the individual. So that sponsorship piece, I think, is really important. And I think, and if I could be bold enough, I think sometimes women need to push themselves a little bit into that space. You know, I can try to create a space where we're doing more formal sponsorship, but be bold in terms of reaching out to senior officers and asking their advice. You know, with senior military, we love to talk. You know, we love to be flattered. You know, give us a ring and ask us advice.
I love that. I love that. So that's how I built my career at Rolls-Royce, because I when I joined, there was 2 different grad programs, and I didn't join the leadership one, and then I kind of wish I had. And so I thought, well, you know what, I'll just get there myself, don't worry. And I used to ring people all the time and be like, hey, I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee in return for your wisdom. And they'd be like, woo. and very, very few people will turn you down for half an hour, you know, to share some of their experiences to help make you better. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that is a really, really good advice. Well, I know that it's almost, our time here is almost up. So do you have any parting words for our listeners, Jim?
Parting words, that puts me on the spot.
Yes, men or women, both.
So this is one of the work I've done on gender and trying to improve our gender diversity in the military is probably one of the highlights of my career in terms of, do I feel I'm making a difference? Why is that? 1, because it's so important, but 2, because it's actually not that difficult. Mm-hmm. And it just requires, I think, from me, a degree of humility and just to step back and almost step outside of the box and look in and ask somebody else to step outside the box with me and look in and point out to me what they were seeing. Not me tell them what I was seeing, which is a senior officer I'm very good at, but having them tell me, this is how it feels to me. This is what I see. This is what I experience. And that, I think, taught me so much. And then I can put my own experience to bear and go, right, we can fix that. This is what we can do. Right, okay, let's have a think about it. But until someone had taken the time to point out the glass ceiling, and it exists at lots of levels. It's not just it's not just there. It's almost like that Invisible Man film where you get the spray paint out and you spray it, and all of a sudden it all comes and you go, wow, that's where it is. So if it was a piece of advice, Get someone to take you out, get the spray can out and point to you where the invisible issues are. Because I think you'd be surprised at how much any of us as male allies can do to make things better.
Beautiful, beautiful. I have just loved interviewing you today. I'm so pleased about the work that you're doing, and what I'm hearing is that there's some great work that is being done in the Navy, and that you're doing that businesses could actually benefit from. I can imagine a future of all these people from the military going out into businesses and actually doing these trainings and teaching them this stuff, because I'm sure there are businesses doing it, but some of the things that you're doing are applicable everywhere. And I really hope that people that are listening today, they might even tap their boss on the shoulder and say, "Hey boss, could you just listen to this podcast? I think it's really important for you." Because I think that your words, Jim, are going to have a huge impact for a lot of women and men around the world. So thank you for being here.
That's very kind. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening, everyone. We hope you now have additional tools and insights for creating your own cracks in the glass ceiling. If you think this will inspire and help others, please share this episode on your social media and leave your comments on MacKayUnlimited.com/podcasts. For more tips and support as you embrace your journey through the glass ceiling, please join our community Facebook group at leadingladiesofFB.com.